Mike Thompson had been cutting hair in the same small barber shop in Jacksonville, North Carolina for 40 years. The shop was 2 blocks from Camp Lejeune. The same red, white, and blue barber pole spinning outside. The same leather chairs from 1984, the same faded photos of Marines on the walls. He was 68 years old. Started cutting hair when he was 28. Right after he got out. Never did anything else. Never wanted to. The shop was simple, clean, professional. 6 chairs, but Mike was usually the only barber working. He knew 3 haircuts: high and tight, regulation cut, and civilian trim. That's all you needed near a Marine base. He'd cut hair for 3 generations of Marines. Fathers, sons, grandsons, all coming through Jacksonville on their way to or from somewhere. Mike knew the rhythm. Young Marines getting their first boot camp haircut before shipping out. Nervous, excited, talking too much. Older Marines coming back from deployment. Quiet, tired, just wanting to look normal again. Mike had heard every story, every war, every battle. Desert Storm, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. 40 years of stories told in his chair while he trimmed hair with steady hands. But Mike never told his own story, never talked about where he'd been, what he'd done, why he walked with a slight limp, why his left hand had scars across the knuckles, why he kept a cane next to his barber chair even though he rarely used it. The Marines who came in sometimes asked, saw the photos on his wall. Pictures from the 1960s. Young Marines in Vietnam. Mike would smile, change the subject, ask about their unit, their deployment, their family, redirect the conversation away from himself. Until Tuesday afternoon, November 2024, a young Marine walked in, fresh, maybe 20 years old. Just finished boot camp by the look of him, high and tight already but growing out a bit. Probably on leave before his first posting. "Afternoon, sir. You taking walk-ins?" "Always am, son." "Have a seat." The kid sat in the chair. Mike draped the cape around him. Started setting up his scissors and clippers. Made small talk. "Where you headed after leave?" "Camp Pendleton, Infantry, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines." Mike's hands paused for just a second. 1515, but he recovered quickly. Started cutting. "Good unit. Lots of history there." "Yes, sir. My grandfather was 15, Vietnam. Talks about it sometimes. Says it was the hardest thing he ever did." Mike nodded. Kept cutting. Said nothing. The young Marine continued. "He was at Hugh City. 1968, the Battle of Hugh. Says it was house-to-house fighting for a month. Worst combat he'd ever seen." Mike's scissors stopped moving. He stood perfectly still, staring at the back of the young Marine's head. "Your grandfather was at Hugh?" "Yes, sir." "He doesn't talk about it much, but when he does, you can tell it changed him." Mike set the scissors down on the counter. His hands were shaking slightly. "Son, I need you to do me a favor. Lean your head forward for a second." The Marine leaned forward, and that's when Mike saw it. A tattoo on the back of the young Marine's neck, just below the hairline, small, black ink, faded from the sun but still clear. Hugh City, 1968, 15 Marines, house to house. Mike's breath caught in his throat. His hands went to the edge of the barber chair to steady himself. The scissors clattered to the floor. The young Marine turned around. "Sir, you okay?" Mike wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the tattoo, seeing something else, somewhere else, someone else, without thinking, without planning. Mike's body moved on its own. He stepped back from the chair, stood at attention, and raised his right hand in a perfect military salute, holding it, rigid, formal, the way a Marine salutes a superior officer. The young Marine's eyes went wide. He scrambled out of the chair, cape still around his neck, stood at attention instinctively, returned the salute. Sir, I don't understand. What's happening? Mike held the salute for 5 full seconds, then slowly lowered his hand. His eyes were wet. His voice shook when he spoke. That tattoo, where did you get it? It's my grandfather's. He got it after Vietnam. I got the same one when I enlisted. To honor him, to carry his unit with me. Mike nodded slowly, walked to the wall of his shop, took down a framed photo, yellowed with age, black and white, dated February 1968, handed it to the young Marine. The photo showed a line of Marines, dirty, exhausted, standing in rubble. Hugh City visible in the background, smoke rising from buildings. And right there in the photo, third from the left, a young Marine, 22 years old, holding an M16, looking directly at the camera, the name stenciled on his flak jacket. Thompson. The young Marine stared at the photo, then at Mike, then back at the photo. You were there? You were at Hugh. Mike's voice was barely a whisper. I was a sergeant. 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, Charlie Company. February through March 1968. 31 days of the hardest fighting the Marine Corps had seen since World War II. The young Marine couldn't speak, just stared. Mike continued. That tattoo, I know exactly when your grandfather got it, because I got mine the same day. Mike turned around, lifted his shirt, and there on his back, between his shoulder blades, was an identical tattoo. Hugh City, 1968, 1 to 5 Marines, house to house. The young Marine's legs gave out. He sat down hard in the barber chair. My grandfather, he talks about his sergeant, says the man saved his life, carried him out of a burning building, never knew his name, just called him the sergeant. He's been trying to find him for 56 years. Mike turned back around. His face was a mask of emotion, joy, grief, recognition, relief. What's your grandfather's name, son? David Chen, Lance Corporal, Charlie Company, 1-5 Marines. Mike closed his eyes, and he was there again, back in Hugh City, February 12th, 1968. If this story of a barber's 56-year silence and a tattoo that revealed everything already has you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe. What happens when a young Marine discovers his barber is the sergeant his grandfather has been searching for since Vietnam will prove that some bonds transcend time, and some salutes are 56 years late. Now let's go back to Hugh City, 1968. To understand why Mike Thompson became a barber instead of staying a Marine. The Battle of Hugh City was hell on earth. The North Vietnamese Army had taken the city during the Tet Offensive, dug in, fortified every building, turned the ancient imperial capital into a fortress. The Marines were sent to take it back. House by house, room by room, floor by floor, Sergeant Mike Thompson, 22 years old, led a squad of 12 Marines, Charlie Company, 1-5 Marines. They'd been fighting in Hugh for 6 days straight. No sleep, limited food, low on ammunition. The NVA fought from every window, every doorway, every corner. The city was rubble, bodies in the streets, civilians caught in crossfire, buildings burning, the smell of smoke and death everywhere. February 12th. Charlie Company was clearing a block of residential buildings near the Citadel. Intelligence said the buildings were empty. Intelligence was wrong. Mike's squad entered the first building. Standard room clearing procedure. Lance Corporal Chen was on point. Young, 19 years old. Second deployment. Good Marine. Followed orders. Kept his head down. They cleared the first floor. Nothing. Started up the stairs to the second floor. That's when the RPG hit. Fired from across the street. Through the second floor window, The explosion was deafening. The building shook. Fire erupted throughout the second floor. Mike was thrown backward down the stairs, ears ringing. Vision blurred. He got up, grabbed his rifle, looked around. Half his squad was down, wounded, unconscious. The building was on fire, flames spreading fast. They had maybe 2 minutes before the whole structure collapsed. "Everyone out, now!" Mike shouted. The Marines who could walk helped those who couldn't, dragged them down the stairs. Out the front door, Mike did a head count. 11 Marines. Someone was missing. Chen. Lance Corporal. David Chen was still inside. Second floor. In the fire. Mike didn't hesitate. Didn't think. Just ran back into the building. The stairs were on fire. Smoke so thick he couldn't see. Heat so intense it burned his lungs. He covered his face with his sleeve. Climbed the stairs. Found Chen on the second floor landing, unconscious. Blood on his face. Pinned under a collapsed beam. Mike grabbed the beam. Tried to lift it. Too heavy. The fire was everywhere now. The walls were starting to collapse. Mike used his rifle as a lever. Pried the beam up just enough to pull Chen out. Threw him over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. 170 pounds of Marine in gear started back down the stairs. The building was collapsing around him. Ceiling falling. Walls cracking. Flames on all sides. He made it to the bottom. Kicked the front door open. Stumbled into the street. Laid Chen down. Checked his breathing. Alive. Pulse weak but there. Doc Wilson, the corpsman, ran over. Started treating Chen immediately. Mike collapsed against a wall. His hands were burned. His back was burned. Shrapnel in his left leg from the RPG. But Chen was alive. That's all that mattered. The building they'd been in collapsed completely 30 seconds later. If Mike had been 10 seconds slower, they both would have died. Chen recovered. Spent 2 weeks in a field hospital. Then was back with the unit. The battle lasted another 3 weeks. By the time Hugh City was secured, 15 Marines had suffered 50% casualties. Mike was recommended for the Silver Star, for running into a burning building to save Chen. He refused it. Said he was just doing his job. Eventually, they gave him a Bronze Star with Valor device. He accepted it, but never wore it. When the battle ended, the survivors of Charlie Company got matching tattoos. A way to remember. To honor those who didn't make it. To carry Hugh City with them forever. Hugh City, 1968, 15 Marines, house to house. 17 Marines got that tattoo, including Mike, including Chen. Mike finished his tour. Came home in 1969, honorably discharged. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Combat Action Ribbon. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a survivor. And survivors carry weight that medals can't measure. He moved to Jacksonville, near Camp Lejeune. Wanted to stay connected to the Marines, but couldn't serve anymore. His leg was permanently damaged. Medical retirement, so he became a barber. Cut Marines' hair, listened to their stories, helped them in the small ways he could. For 40 years, and he never told anyone about Hugh City, about Chen, about the building, about any of it, until today. Mike and the young Marine stood in the barber shop, both silent, processing what had just been revealed. "Your grandfather," Mike said finally. "He's been looking for me for 56 years. He talks about you sometimes. The sergeant, the man who saved his life. He tried to find you after the war, looked through records, asked other Marines. Nobody knew where you went. I didn't want to be found," Mike said quietly. "I came home and I just wanted to be normal. Wanted to forget. Wanted to move on." He never forgot. He tells the story to every family member, at every holiday, every birthday. "The sergeant ran into a burning building and carried me out. He says he's alive because of you. his wife, his kids, his grandkids. All of us exist because you saved him that day." Mike sat down heavily in one of the barber chairs, the weight of 56 years suddenly pressing down on him. "What's your name, son?" Daniel Chen, named after my grandfather." "He named you David?" "No, sir, Daniel, but he calls me David. Says I remind him of himself when he was young." Mike smiled slightly. He was a good Marine, brave, always volunteered for point. Never complained. He still doesn't. He's 75 years old. Still does push-ups every morning. Still stands at attention when the national anthem plays. Still wears his dog tags. Where does he live? Here, Jacksonville, about 10 miles from here. He moved here after the war, wanted to be near Camp Lejeune. Near the Marines, Mike went very still. He's been here? In Jacksonville? For 56 years? Yes, sir. Owns a restaurant downtown. Chen's Garden. Chinese food. Been open since 1972. Mike's hands gripped the arms of the barber chair. I've driven past that restaurant 1,000 times. Never went in. Never knew. Daniel pulled out his phone. "Let me call him. Let me tell him." "No," Mike said quickly. "Not like this. Not over the phone. This needs to be in person." "When?" "Now. Right now. Before I lose my nerve. Before I talk myself out of it." Chen's Garden was a small Chinese restaurant on Market Street. Red lanterns outside. Traditionnel décor. The smell of stir-fry and steamed rice. Mike walked in. Daniel beside him. His hands were shaking. He hadn't been this nervous since Hugh City. An elderly Asian man was behind the counter, working the register, talking to customers. He was small, maybe 5'6", gray hair, wrinkled face, but his posture was still military straight. His movements still precise. Daniel walked up to the counter. "I'd re. Grandpa?" The old man looked up, smiled. "Daniel, you come for lunch? I make you favorite." "Grandpa, I need you to come outside for a minute. Someone's here to see you. I'm busy. Lunch rush. Tell them come back later. Grandpa, please, this is important." The old man sighed, came out from behind the counter, followed Daniel to the door. Mike was standing outside. On the sidewalk, waiting, David Chen stepped outside, looked at Mike, didn't recognize him at first. Just saw an old white man with a cane. A stranger. Then Mike lifted his shirt, turned around, showed his back, the tattoo. Hugh City, 1968, 1 of 5 Marines, house to house. David Chen froze. His eyes locked on the tattoo. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hands started shaking. Mike turned back around, stood at attention as best he could with his cane. Lance Corporal Chen, Charlie Company. "Sergeant Thompson reporting." David Chen's legs buckled. He would have fallen if Daniel hadn't caught him. He stared at Mike, his eyes filling with tears. You're the sergeant. You're him. After all these years, I thought you were dead. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find you. I was here, the whole time, 2 blocks from Lejeune, cutting hair. I didn't know you were looking. I didn't know you were here." David stepped forward, slowly, like he was approaching something he was afraid might disappear. He reached out, touched Mike's arm, making sure he was real. "You saved my life. That building, the fire. I remember you carrying me. I remember waking up in the hospital. But you were gone. Back to the fight. I never saw you again. You recovered. That's all that mattered. You lived. You got to go home. To have a family. That's why I went in. That's why any of us did anything." David Chen, 75 years old, former Marine, business owner, grandfather of 4, stood at attention and saluted. Mike returned the salute. Both men held it. 2 old warriors. 56 years later, finally finding each other again. Then David broke. He stepped forward and hugged Mike, and both men cried. Right there on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant. 56 years of searching. 56 years of wondering. 56 years of carrying that day in Hugh City. All of it pouring out. Daniel stood watching, recording on his phone. Not for social media. For family. For history. For proof that this moment was real. Mike's barbershop looked different now. The walls had new photos. Not just his old ones from Vietnam, but new ones. A photo of Mike and David at a Marines ball. Both in dress uniform. David's fit better than Mike's. They'd both gained weight in 56 years. A photo of David's family. His wife, his 3 children, his 8 grandchildren. All of them gathered around Mike at a family dinner. The family that existed because Mike had run into a burning building in 1968, a photo of the 2 old Marines at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall in D.C., standing in front of the panel with the names of Charlie, company Marines who didn't come home. Every Tuesday afternoon, David closed his restaurant early, came to the barbershop, sat in Mike's chair. They'd talk about Hugh, about the war, about the 56 years after, about life. Sometimes other Vietnam veterans would come in, hear the story, share their own. The barbershop became an unofficial gathering place. Old Marines finding community, finding understanding, finding peace. Mike started speaking at local schools, talking about Vietnam, about Hugh City, about service, about sacrifice. David always came with him. They'd tell the story together. The building, the fire, the rescue, the 56 years of searching. Students would ask, "Why didn't you talk about it before?" Mike's answer was always the same. "Because I didn't think it mattered. I thought I was just doing my job." But David taught me that it did matter. That saving one person matters. That one life can become a whole family. That one moment can echo through generations. Daniel Chen, the young Marine who'd brought them together, finished his training at Camp Pendleton. Before his first deployment, he came back to Jacksonville, got a haircut from Mike, brought his entire platoon. All 30 Marines sat in the barbershop, listening to Mike and David tell the story of Hugh City, of the building, of the rescue, of the 56 years that followed. Mike cut every Marine's hair that day. Free. Told each one, "Take care of your brothers. That's the only thing that matters. Not the medals, not the glory. Your brothers. You take care of them, and they'll take care of you." The local news covered the story. Barber and customer reunion after 56 years. It went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. 2 old men, 2 old Marines, finally finding each other after more than half a century. The Marine Corps invited them to speak at officer training school, to talk about brotherhood, about leadership, about what it means to take care of your Marines. Mike told the young officers, "I didn't save Chen because he was special. I saved him because he was my Marine. Any of you would have done the same. That's what being a Marine means. You don't leave anyone behind. Not in a burning building. Not anywhere," David added, "and I've spent 56 years trying to say thank you, trying to find him, trying to tell him what his choice meant, not just for me, but for my wife, my children, my grandchildren. Every person in my family exists because Sergeant Thompson ran into that building. That's the weight of leadership. Your choices echo through generations." The commandant of the Marine Corps was in the audience. After the speech, he approached Mike and David. "Gentlemen, the Marine Corps owes you both a debt. For your service in Vietnam, for your continued service to Marines ever since, for showing us what brotherhood really means." He presented them both with coins. Commandant's coins, the highest honor he could give. Mike and David stood together, two old Marines, 70 years old and 75 years old, still standing tall, still serving, still taking care of their brothers. Mike Thompson continued cutting hair until he was 72, then retired. Not because he couldn't do it anymore, but because he wanted to spend more time with David, traveling, speaking, sharing their story. They visited 47 high schools together, 23 military bases, 12 veterans hospitals. Everywhere they went, they told the same story. Hugh City, the building, the rescue, the 56 years, the reunion. Young Marines would ask for their autographs, ask to take photos with them, ask for advice. Mike's advice: find your David, find the person you're meant to save. And when you do, don't let 56 years pass before you tell them they mattered. David's advice: find your sergeant. Find the person who pulled you out of the fire. And when you do, spend every day showing them their sacrifice wasn't wasted. The tattoos that had brought them back together became famous. Other Vietnam veterans started getting similar tattoos. Other units, other battles. But the same message: we were there. We survived. We remember. Mike Thompson died in 2028. Age 82, heart attack, quick, painless. David Chen was with him, holding his hand. In Mike's living room, they'd been watching the Marines-Navy football game. Mike's last words were, "We did okay, didn't we, Chen? We took care of our brothers." David's response: "We did more than okay, Sergeant. We did our duty." At Mike's funeral, 200 Marines attended. Active duty, veterans, spanning 3 generations. All wearing dress blues, all saluting as the casket passed. David Chen, 79 years old, gave the eulogy. Standing straight, military bearing, voice strong. "Sergeant Thompson saved my life in 1968. He ran into a burning building and carried me out. But that's not why we're here today. We're here because for 40 years after that, he kept saving lives. Every young Marine who sat in his chair, every veteran who needed someone to listen, every person who heard his story and learned what service really means. He saved all of us, not from fire, but from forgetting what it means to take care of each other, forgetting what it means to be Marines, forgetting what it means to run into the fire when your brothers need you. Semper Fi, Sergeant. Semper Fi." The Marines in attendance stood, saluted, and in one voice, echoing across the cemetery, "Semper Fi." David Chen scattered Mike's ashes at Hugh City, traveled to Vietnam, got permission from both governments, returned to the site of the building where he'd been pulled from the fire 60 years earlier. The building was gone, rebuilt, modern now, but David stood where it had been, held the urn with Mike's ashes, and said a prayer in English and Vietnamese. "Thank you, Sergeant, for that day, for every day after, for showing me what a Marine is supposed to be. Rest easy. We've got the watch now." He poured some of the ashes into the ground where the building had stood. The rest he brought back to Jacksonville, to the barber shop. The shop was still there, now run by a young Marine veteran. But Mike's chair remained, unchanged, a photo of Mike and David beside it, and the tattoo photograph. Hugh City, 1968, 15 Marines, house to house. Every Marine who got a haircut there heard the story. The sergeant, the lance corporal, the building, the fire, the 56 years, the reunion, the tattoos that brought them back together, and every Marine left understanding. Some bonds can't be broken. Some debts can never be repaid. And some salutes are worth waiting 56 years to give.